are at a major crossroads in business and in artificial intelligence and AI. Will we keep clinging to rigid top-down hierarchies, or will we unlock the true power of peer-to-peer networks and collective intelligence? So Mr. Rod Collins is here to answer that question and help us out today. Rod Collins led Blue Cross through record-breaking growth by ditching the command and control model, and he is here to show you why that same mindset shift is critical in the age of AI. This is the Marketer of the Day podcast with Robert Plank. We're brought to you by dfypodcast.com, where your podcast becomes your most powerful leadership and visibility tool. So Mr. Rod Collins is here to talk us about possibly blind spots centralized leadership teams might have, about will these top-down hierarchies eventually collapse, but most importantly, AI alignment and how we can get those working alongside human goals and human wisdom, especially as it relates to the next 10 years. So, Mr. Rod Collins, good to see you again. Good to be chatting with you. How are you?
I'm doing great, and it's good to be with you again, Robert.
Yes, very excellent. It is, isn't it? And, in this day and age of AI, you open up social media and there's this dead internet theory, right? 70%, 80%, it's all AI written. And then the comments are AI talking to other AI. There's this fear that we're losing our humanity. But luckily, we got a couple of guys here on this podcast, right? I know at least I'm real. I know that you're real. So we're having a real conversation just about the present and the future. So what's on your mind? What are you currently passionate about? What is newsworthy, talkworthy?
Well, from our previous discussion that I'm really passionate about business organizations transitioning their fundamental structures from centralized top-down hierarchies to decentralized, self-managed peer-to-peer networks. And the primary reason is the world is moving so fast, incredibly fast, quite frankly, faster than any single human being can process what's happening in real time. And networks give organizations the capability to leverage the collective intelligence of everyone rather than to leverage the elite intelligence of a few. And I think that we're seeing that transition happening in business, not the way I would have preferred it. I would have preferred it to see companies naturally evolve. I think what's happening is more of a displace and replace strategy, where companies like, for example, Blockbuster could not depart from its top-down hierarchy, and it no longer exists. And it was replaced by Netflix. And Netflix has the capability to innovate. Their product models today are very different from the original one they had, which was to send DVDs to your home. They don't do that anymore. And so I have to believe that there's some form of a decentralized, self-managed network structure within Netflix. It may be a hybrid, but I think that'll be sufficient. And so I'm comfortable that we're beginning to see that transition happening in business. Where I'm focusing my attention now is, as our listeners will know, the big topic in business today is AI. And where is AI going? And there are two schools of thought among the thought leaders in this space. One is that AI is going to be the worst form of tyranny that we've ever seen. And there's fears that AI could overtake humanity. On the other side, there are thought leaders who think, no, AI could literally evolve humanity and could take humanity to an incredible place and an incredible world. And I think that both those points of view could happen. And which way it goes will depend upon what will be the organizational structure for AI. And I'm not sure that we're thinking about that. We have a lot of technologists who are very, very good at physical technology who are developing AI. But a question that I have is, do we really understand what intelligence is? I mean, we call this artificial intelligence, which I think is a horrible name, because we don't want to build anything that's artificial. And I actually think what we have at this point is accelerated information. We're able to process information very, very quickly. Now, as we do this, if we build AI systems as centralized top-down hierarchies, we are likely to create the worst form of tyranny that the world has ever seen. And I think we're getting an early warning indicator in terms of what's happening in China. Social credit scores, the government having the capacity to know everything about everyone in real time and to drive your behavior as it computes scores. And so you might be prohibited from going to the movies or having this job based upon a quote, quote, social credit score. That would be the worst form of tyranny. However, if we build AI as a decentralized peer-to-peer network, and think Bitcoin, think blockchain, and what distinguishes blockchain is no central agent can control it. And if we build AI along those lines, it is going to inevitably gather all kinds of information that's never happened before, but it could be done within the context of safety so that no single entity or no single individual could control your behavior. And so AI in this latter context, if we build it as a peer-to-peer network, could actually expand the freedom of people. And so I think this is a fork in the road that we're fast approaching. And whether we build it as a hierarchy or as a network is probably going to determine whether it amplifies tyranny or amplifies freedom.
And the choice is up to us, isn't it? It could literally go either way depending on which path we choose to take. And, I think so much of it depends on us educating the average person, doesn't it? I know we're a couple of technical guys coming from a computer programming background, and it even took me a few years to understand all the peer-to-peer kind of the structure and the logic and the blockchain, the idea that there's hundreds, thousands of copies of the ledger all distributed. And if someone were to hijack the network, they'd have to take over millions of other computers. It'd be almost impossible. They'd have to eat up half of it so that way they could outvote the other half. And it's almost impossible. So it's so spread out, but then it seems so complex. It's so difficult to get our heads wrapped around this. So is there an easy way to understand? I know there's kind of these two implementations, right? There's the business structure, and the nuance there is that you say, well, if you transition from top-down hierarchy to peer-to-peer, it's not bossless. There's still accountability, but there's these cells. And then there's the other implementation where we're talking about AI, where it's not just all one, it's centralized mind and storage. So is there a metaphor or an easy way to make this accessible, help us understand top-down versus peer-to-peer?
Okay, probably the best metaphor is Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is different from other cryptocurrencies because it is built in the context of this blockchain. And so to help our audiences get a sense around this, and they're seeing the value of Bitcoin just explode, and I think with good reason. Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever he, she, or they are is brilliant. And I'll also say they were brilliant to remain anonymous because this structure will be the greatest threat to government structures as we know them today. So let's talk about how this works. If I could use a simple example, if you are having let's say an auction, and there's a particular piece that somebody's interested in, and you wanted to you might go in and bid on this product, okay, and at the end of it, if you wound up being the brother-in-law of the auctioneer and said, this isn't worth anything, we're going to work a deal here and I'm going to get it for a cheaper price. That kind of corruption can happen when you have what is essentially a top-down structure, which is what an auction could be. But if you had an auction in blockchain, okay, there wouldn't be a single ledger that would be maintained by the auctioneer. There would be a ledger that's maintained by everybody in the space through the bidding process. And so if this individual came up afterwards and said, I want to work a deal, the auctioneer would say, I can't do that because I'd have to change all of the other ledgers. And so what makes Bitcoin so special is all the miners, if you will, essentially have a ledger. And so it becomes difficult to, one, do corruption, but it becomes difficult to exercise control. And so most of us cannot imagine a system in which control is not a fundamental dynamic. Control is the fundamental way power works in top-down organizations. Power is a function of force, coercion. But in Bitcoin, in the structure, in the blockchain structure that Satoshi Nakamoto introduced us to, you don't have control that's done by single entities, by elite groups. You have power being a force of synergy. It's power with. So things can only happen if, in the case of Bitcoin, if more than 51% agree. Only then can the ledgers be changed. And that's why to this day, Bitcoin has never been hacked. Because the only way you can hack something is you have to take control. And so this might be a difficult concept for our audience to understand, but blockchain is essentially a system that doesn't operate by control. It operates by synergy. And this is why those who say that AI can enhance humanity, if we have a structure that's highly intelligent, that in which control is not a dynamic, what it will do is expand consciousness. And this is what happens inside organizations when they have peer-to-peer network structures rather than the top-down hierarchical structures. And I have firsthand experience in participating in peer-to-peer network processes. And what happens there, the leader doesn't control the group, the leader facilitates the group. And the group aggregates its own collective intelligence. And what we experienced is we expanded our business consciousness about the problems we were trying to solve, and were able to accomplish it on time, under budget, high quality. Why? Because we expanded the consciousness of everyone involved, and we were uncovering unknown unknowns, what we didn't know we didn't know. And so if AI is designed as a system that really expands human awareness and is not focused on control, but really on expanding everyone's intelligence, then we wind up being a smarter population. Smarter populations are more innovative. Innovative produces wealth, and it'll do it in such a way that everyone gets to participate in that. So these are the choices I think that we're looking at down the road. And I do think these two structures are pivotal, and it becomes even more important for AI than it does for business organizations.
I agree. It's so important, and we're at this crossroads. And so you figure, okay, well, the command and control, it's dependent on this top down, on the power being kind of clutched and held, and for the peer to peer to work, especially you think about like Bitcoin, like what made it successful, like lots of adoption, right? Like you can make the best platform, service, software, Netflix in the world, but unless a lot of people use it, then it won't go anywhere. So what do you think are these sorts of requirements for peer-to-peer to work? You figure like there needs to be a lot of like buy-in, but you tell me, like, in order for organizations to adopt this, in order for AI to be peer-to-peer, like, what are the requirements? What needs to happen?
So here's the big one. And this is what Satoshi Nakamoto did. And in terms of my own experience in doing this inside a large, complex organization, the leader has to voluntarily give up control. And that's a big one. And when Satoshi Nakamoto designed that system, once he unleashed it, he, she, or they cannot control it. Once the structure got going, when I would facilitate what I call collective intelligence workshops, even though I had the highest title in the room, I never expressed my opinion out of concern it could sway others. It didn't matter what I thought. What is important to do is we need to aggregate the collective intelligence of all the participants and then see where that takes us. And so when the leader becomes the facilitator of that, you wind up creating a stronger more intelligent organization than control could ever accomplish. And here's why. What top-down hierarchies do, by leveraging the intelligence of an elite few and silencing the voices of those who do not agree, is it amplifies the unconscious biases of that elite intelligence. And we're seeing lots of examples of that around us. Censorship always amplifies unconscious biases. When you have a network, when no single individual can control the voice of another, then all voices are heard. Those that are in the middle, those are at the extremes, and you discover that everybody has a little piece of wisdom. Some may have more than others, but by aggregating all the voices, what winds up happening is you either uncover the unconscious biases or you move past them by coming up with solutions that the largest number of people can agree with. And when you uncover unconscious biases, you are uncovering what we don't know that we don't know. And that's what always winds up biting us in the back. This is the bureaucracy's great nemesis. It's what they don't know that they don't know. And they don't have systems to uncover that bites them in the back. And with the pace of change getting faster and faster and faster, the real job of intelligence is uncovering unknowns as rapidly as we can, as early as we can, so that we are able to innovate and move as fast as the world around us. This is quickly becoming the context of business, and I believe it will be the context of AI.
And can you help us out in understanding this unknown concept? Because you figure, okay, well, what Blockbuster going under? I mean, you figure maybe there are many factors, but the internet and streaming and Netflix and all these other things, right? And you figure that the retail outlets that are struggling, right? Your Sears went under, your Macy's is struggling because of Amazon and internet and retail. And so, but as far as like what you've seen, right, in these companies that you've helped, uncovering the unknown unknowns that top down can't see because of their unconscious biases, but peer to peer brings forth all little opinions. I mean, help us understand, like, what are some of these unknown unknowns that you've revealed for organizations?
So let's take an example from the past. Again, I think our audience will relate to. We referred to them before. They might be surprised to find out that at the point where Blockbuster was the king of video, and they were a $6 billion operation, quite successful, two people came in and met with the CEO for a short 45, 50-minute meeting, and they wanted to sell their company to him for $50 million, which was roughly the amount that they were in debt. And they said, we will build for you Blockbuster.com and transition your product structure from selling DVDs and cassettes to streaming. And the CEO, who had the authority to make decisions unilaterally, laughed at them and said, streaming will never, ever disrupt our business. And so he turned them down. Those two people who met with him were the co-founders of Netflix. We should be watching Blockbuster today, not Netflix. But the CEO of Blockbuster had an unconscious bias, maybe even a conscious bias. And there was no structure within Blockbuster in which that could be challenged. Now, suppose the CEO did not have the unilateral authority to make that decision. Suppose that had to be run by a council, a network, if you will. Some participants may have said, no, we need to be looking at our products and our markets differently. If they had a network structure, it is highly likely they would have bought Netflix. They would have transitioned from stores to streaming. Look at Netflix. Netflix moved from product model to product model. They did go from sending DVDs. They went to streaming. Now they're producing films. They're constantly expanding and thinking. And that's because there is some sort of network structure that is allowing them to use the collective intelligence of their people to make decisions. And so uh, when you have a network structure and you allow dissonant voices to speak, because let's face it, innovation in its first phase is always disruptive. It's always some form of dissonance. And companies have got to allow that because their product models are going to die. The question is, who replaces it? Themselves or somebody else in the market? You can't sustain product models for 40 years anymore. And so companies have to be very, very nimble at being able to evolve. And that's what we need to do with AI. AI needs to be able to evolve. And that's why it's important to focus more on consciousness and expanding our awareness to form, I think the future of AI will ultimately be, it may go down the tyranny road at first, but I think ultimately over time, it will be a human machine symbiosis. It will enable us to do what Kahneman and Tversky call system two thinking, which has been slow, deliberate thinking at system one speeds. System one is fast thinking. It's our ability to make quick decisions with limited information. Well, what if we could make faster decisions with lots of information that normally comes through what they call the system two process? I think the real goal of AI is to allow human beings to do what Kahneman and Tversky call system two thinking at system one speeds. It means we will make more rational decisions that are not driven by biases. And if we can do that, it is the human machine symbiosis that is the real future, I think, of AI. And just to close this thought out, people may remember when Google invented, I think it was called Alpha. They came up with a chess application,
Right.
and it beat the world's greatest chess master. But the chess master had an interesting reaction. He said, "What if I partner with the machine and we play a machine?" And when they did that, the human machine symbiosis beat the machine. And so that's, I want to leave our audience with that model. It isn't a war between humans and machine. It will be the symbiosis. It'll be synergistic power, not the coercive power of hierarchies, but the synergistic power of a human machine symbiosis that is focused on expanding our awareness, our consciousness, and our intelligence that I think represents the future of humanity down the road. We may not get there in the first step. I hope we do. We may go through some form of top-down hierarchical tyrannical application, but ultimately, I think in the long run, the intelligence will win out, and I think it will be this human-machine symbiosis.
Yes, that's beautiful. It's wonderful to think about. And it makes a lot of sense that we might go down the wrong path for a little while. And you figure there's like parallels to when there's like fascism or authoritarian governments where it kind of it's a jolt, a jump start at first, but then the dictator, the leader, the family dies, and then it kind of collapses. But then when you have more of a democracy kind of government, when you have like ancient Greece or America, you hope that when there's less of the self and there's more people involved, then it's more stable because it's not there's less single points of failure, aren't there? And you hope that that
Yeah.
would be, even though it is way messier, way more complex, quite a lot to deal with. It's like, well, that's what we want as far as something that sustains and gets us to where we want to go, which is to have this symbiosis that you're talking about. There's all these terrifying studies about the kids these days. They're so dependent on the AI as to help think for them, and we don't want that, right? We want to use it to help us go faster and help us go better. And how can we do that? What are some next steps here as far as you have your excellent book, you have a website and social media? If someone's mind is just blown by some of these ideas about the peer-to-peer organization and self-managed teams making better decisions, what are some next steps here?
I'd ask people to always keep two questions in mind, whether they're working in organizations, whether they're working in technology. And they're two fundamental questions of organizational structure. Who decides? How does power work? Who decides? If you're a leader, don't be a boss. Be a facilitator. Be big enough to leverage the collective intelligence. You'll be able to move faster because no single individual can process the pace of change today in real time. But the real thing is, how does power work? Invest in power with rather than power over. And the key dynamic for that is no censorship. The founders of the United States got it right. We're the only country in the world that has freedom of speech within our Constitution. We have to honor that, because all innovation starts out as unacceptable speech, and you can't kill that. And don't worry about this disinformation, misinformation. The best cure for poor information is more information. And so it works its way through. And if AI does help us to do system two thinking at system one speeds, we will have more rational intelligence at our fingertips. And that will also find a way in which to combine the best of everyone's thinking in such a way that it'll be better thinking than any one of us can do, and it'll be thinking better, and that better thinking will be such that more of us will sign on to us, and perhaps we can get out of these fractures that seem to be dominating things today.
Very nice. And I love that kind of explanation there of AI. There's all these vague terms, but you say it's the system two thinking, which is like the deep thought. You think about my strategy, my next steps at the system one speeds, which is like if I'm in a crowded room and my eyes are darting around looking for that exact person, and you combine that and it's just a new form of intelligence, right? And we can achieve greater things. And so as far as there's the book you have, right? Nobody is smarter than everybody. Why self-managed teams make better decisions and deliver extraordinary results. So how does someone get that book, and who's it for? And is there a website or social media, or where should someone go after listening to this podcast?
They can get the book from Amazon, and it'll be focused on organizational structures, but it's easily transferable to what we've been talking about in terms of AI. I do have a website, rodcollins.net. And if people are interested more in this thinking around intelligence, because I think we better understand human intelligence, and I don't think we do before we develop artificial intelligence. I'm doing a series of monthly articles and essays and on my Substack, and they can get to that through my website. Again, that's rodcollins, rodcollins.net.
Very cool. RodCollins.net. And as an author, Mr. Rod Collins, he's continuously focused on pushing businesses to rethink the way they work, collaborate, and remain competitive in today's marketplace. You can find out all about that at rodcollins.net. There's his books, there's his speaking details, but there's also that Substack, which is what he's mentioning, where he talks about everything that we've been discussing, but with a deeper dive, talking about this fork in the road we find ourselves in, the human intelligence map, archetypes and paradoxes. So if this is something where you think that your future of your business and yourself and your livelihood depends on it, which it does, and you want to navigate these possible two timelines we're going into, the authoritarian AI versus the peer-to-peer, you need to educate yourself because, as you said, Mr. Rod, that the cure for disinformation is more information, right? Outweigh the good with the bad. And this fast changing world we're going into, it isn't necessarily unmanageable. It just needs to be managed differently. We're talking about the people and your organization, but also separating the noise from the signal, right? Digging through all this. We have like unlimited information now. Well, now we need to distill it down and know what's important. So the first step to figuring this out, you go to rodcollins.net. If you feel like getting the book, it's called Nobody is Smarter Than Everybody. If you feel like reading that Substack, you click over there to rodcollins.substack.com, and you'll be glad you did, because now you're educating yourself about where AI is going and how we can possibly at least try to keep up somewhat. I'm not sure if we can completely keep up, but we can at least be better than the average person. And so as people are checking out those resources, Mr. Rod, at rodcollins.net, it's time for the scary part of the podcast where I try to stump you, I try to put you on the spot by asking about a fun, quote or lesson that has served you? So, what comes to mind for a fun quote or lesson?
The fun quote or lesson. It's the title of the book. Nobody's smarter than everybody, and I don't think we appreciate the incredible asset that we humans have, which is our own collective intelligence. And if we can develop processes, if we can develop ways in which we can tap into that, we will eliminate a lot of the fractiousness that we see in debates and in the poor quality of conversation that we seem to see today. So that is probably the thing. That was something I discovered along the way. And over the years, I've seen there's just a lot of wisdom in that phrase. Nobody is smarter than everybody.
I agree. It's a funny, clever play on words, isn't it? And it is possible, and we can do it. So get yourself educated. Go to rodcollins.net and get that book called Nobody is Smarter Than Everybody: Why Self-Managed Teams Make Better Decisions and Deliver Extraordinary Results, by Mr. Rod Collins himself. What an education. What a fun discussion we just had about AI and peer-to-peer in the future. I'm glad we had it, and thanks for being here, Mr. Rod, and helping us out, and I appreciate you doing it.
Robert, pleasure to be with you. Thank you very much.